Somis, Omni. If I've interacted with angels, what does the design of our physical universe look like? To Somis, the science of angels, the physical universe human beings live in, where planet Earth is located in, is called the Omni. And the Omni is made up of an infinite number of spheres called Jo and Somis. Within the universe known to human science, there is a pattern of spheres making up spheres such as atoms, Earth and the Moon, Sun and the Solar System, the Milky Way galaxy. Each sphere is defined by its gravitational field, where disks can form at the middle away from the poles due to spin and centrifugal force, like the disk shape of the Solar System and the Milky Way galaxy. A planet can also have a disk like Saturn, for example. For planet Earth and the Moon, these two bodies clean up the nearby debris, leaving Earth without a disk. According to the Omni, there should be a bigger sphere above the scale of the Milky Way galaxy, which the Big Bang Theory seems to describe. Specifically, the Big Bang Theory postulates that there was a dense mass of singularity that then expanded rapidly to form the present universe. If so, the rapid expansion from a single location, according to the Big Bang Theory, should form the shape of a giant sphere. And per the Omni, the singularity and then the giant sphere formed by the Big Bang will be states of existence for a sphere, similar to how stars will experience birth and death. Please note there's a scientific theory called the Big Bounce that speculates that there was a big collapse that led to the singularity that then led to the Big Bang, where the collapse and expansion are part of a normal cycle, and this is consistent with what is expected with Omni. And the Omni will expect other spheres as big as the Big Bang to exist, that then together with the Big Bang will form even bigger spheres, and bigger spheres beyond that. Going down a scale, what do spheres smaller than the atom look like to us? To answer that question, please note speed seems to be correlated with the size of the spheres. For example, please know how long it takes to complete one rotation around the Big Bang versus the Milky Way versus the Solar System versus the Earth versus around an atom. Know how speed increases as you reduce in scale. Recall Albert Einstein said nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. I suspect this is true down to the scale of the atoms. For the Omni, spheres below the atom should be able to travel faster than the speed of light. If so, something moving too fast will look like a motion blur to us, or instruments will detect the paths taken by these super fast spheres and mistake them as strings. As such, this is probably why the string theory speculates that atoms, quarks, and the universe are made of strings, where per the Omni model there are actually spheres moving so fast they look like strings to us. And below strings, there should be spheres that are smaller and move faster, so forth, until spheres become so small and fast they appear like nothing to us, if not become invisible. Please note the presence of smaller and faster moving spheres to the point of invisibility will explain dark matter and dark energy. According to science, 95% of the universe is made of dark matter and dark energy. If so, what do we call solid matter? To answer this question, we need to examine the Jo sphere in more detail. To Somis, the Jo conceptually has a donut shape with negative infinity making up the donut hole and positive infinity outside the donut. Each sphere in the Omni will have the conceptual donut shape of a Jo, and the Omni itself is also a Jo and would have a donut shape to outside observers, such as two angels. But if you think about it, you can never reach infinity, like a graph of numbers can only approach infinity but never touch it. As such, for a Jo, we cannot see the negative or positive infinity, where reality looks like infinity going in all directions as a result. For the positive infinity for each Jo, such as for planet Earth or the Solar System, we know the rest of the universe is out there and we cannot see a boundary, where there is no demarcation to mark the edge of the universe. And the positive infinity to the Omni will be heaven, and the Omni exists like an object in heaven, and angels use the Omni to try to make new angels out of souls. For the negative infinity of Jo, this will be the invisible source of gravity for spheres, such as for planet Earth. What does the dead center of gravity look like? If exposed, the negative infinity looks like a black hole. But in most instances, like stars and planets, the negative infinity is not as strong as a black hole, but strong enough so that matters would coalesce to form a material sphere. Keep in mind that matter is made up of tiny spheres with their own gravity. So solidity is created when a large number of spheres with individual gravity stick together to form masses around the negative infinity of a larger sphere. Material spheres are made this way by these tiny spheres massing together, similar to how planet Earth is made up of a countless number of atoms. The entirety of the Omni is made of gravity in this way, filled with spheres with gravity fields collecting a large number of smaller spheres that look like matter to us. Note there is a direction to the flow of gravity in the universe toward the negative infinity of each sphere at every scale of the Omni, toward the nucleus of galaxies, star systems, planets, atoms, etc. Note how gravity flows like a river through the Omni. For physicists familiar with Einstein's general relativity that explains gravity is caused by the distortion of the space-time fabric, please note Einstein's theory states mass causes gravity while I'm suggesting gravity causes mass. Such is where the greater the gravity of a gel sphere, the greater the mass that can collect around the negative infinity. The flow of gravity is what powers the entirety of the Omni, and spheres sticking together will form what we call solid mass, which then makes up the reality we know. In the flow of gravity from large spheres down to smaller spheres wraps around in a circle like a giant donut shape except infinite in size. Should you find a passage that goes around the entirety of the Omni, it will feel like a bottomless pit where you will keep falling and falling endlessly. Please note this is not the same as falling into a black hole. In a black hole you might get crushed or experience other physical changes but eventually get stuck because your physical mass can only compress so far. Instead, pretend you can shrink infinitely. You will see gravity flowing toward the negative infinity of spheres from scale to scale, like first the galaxy, then the star system, then the planet or star, then an atom, etc., and gravity flows on infinitely as you shrink. When viewed as a system with infinite flowing gravity, you can call the Omni a perpetual motion machine where the downward motion of gravity is wrapped around in a circle so that falling downward can keep going and going, therefore keeping gravity flowing. However, when viewed from the perspective of an angel, the Omni was created when the angel used magic to cause nothingness to spin in a circle, and this spin became the flow of gravity to us, meaning instead of viewing gravity as a falling motion, its flow was a motion set by an angel. With this flowing gravity, eddies and other spins form to cause congestion to the flow, which then jam together to form masses of solidity. From the perspective of angels, the Omni looks like a geodonut, and like a circle, you can slice it infinitely in all directions across all dimensions an infinite amount of times. And for souls living within the Omni, we can only use our senses and body to focus on our local slice of infinity relevant to our lives. As human beings, we might want to understand the construct of the universe due to a desire to survive and control the physical reality. To angels, the Omni is merely a place and setting created by angels for souls to interact with bodies to try to make new angels, meaning souls are more important to angels while the Omni is merely a canvas. And the infinite number of spheres of the Omni is similar to how print will use color dots or how light pixels will produce pictures on TV and computer screens. And the entirety of our physical universe is made up of this flowing gravity that then forms spheres from smaller spheres until they mass together to form solidity to us, so we got a place to live in order for angels to try to make angels out of us. As proof of this reality, please know how the Omni as a model is capable of explaining the Big Bang Theory, the string theory, dark matter, and dark energy. Hopefully my description of the Omni sounds reasonable and possible to you. Thanks for watching.